Hey, I have a question. If you have an alert that says critical in Slack, but you never check it, does that mean it's critical?
No.
I just saw all your critical shit on Slack in your Slack channel.
I mean,
Are those actually critical?
No, it's no, it's the problem with, DevOps monitoring. It's completely useless because you don't care about if there's a random request that takes 2,000 milliseconds. That's not really indicative of anything.
Right.
So,
but you do want to know if
you want to know if the website's down. You
Yeah.
want to know if the website's really slow for a lot of people, and all these monitoring services, they proxy that by, okay, I'm going to send you an alert if there's a request over this. Now, to be fair, a lot of these services have gotten much, much better, and they will look for like 10 requests that go over. But yeah, it's just, it's useless. It's one of those things you set up because it's like happy path set up, and then 2 years later, it's just useless, and we don't even look at that channel.
What do we use for that?
There's like a combination of things. There is a like roll bar for error monitoring. There's another thing with roll bar where like people will just like randomly hit API endpoints without the proper params. Or like they're scanning for like WP login.php.
Yeah.
And like that will trigger errors sometimes.
Yeah.
I think I've got rid of those 404 ones, but still, Anyway, roll bar, there's a logging service. I don't know which one of the Paper Trail or something, one of the default Heroku ones. And then Heroku has some metrics. And those things all have like Slack integration, and it's so easy to set up, right? You just click a button and they're in your Slack channel. So
and then you ignore them.
It's a black hole, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It seems like a product problem,
Absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, when you're setting up these ops tools, they're like, it's like you're like the UIs and everything, or like the UIs directly translate to like Apache log monitoring or Nginx log monitoring or like Rails log monitoring. It's not like we need more than that.
Right.
So there's definitely a way to present it. And to be fair, like I'm like definitely like 2 years behind on all this stuff. And I think some of the newer stuff with like observability is a lot better. And I've heard people like enjoy that, and it's not like the old, just tailing log files and looking for errors. Yeah.
I know Wes and Scott on Syntax FM always talk about LogRocket. And I think it has a UI where it lets you know, and you can just click on it, and then there's a UI right there. So you can just say like, ignore this alert or whatever. So that's what I would like,
Cool. Yeah. Rollbar has that, but it still feels like it's just a website into your Rails log.
Right.
Yeah. And there's just tons of errors that just naturally happen that are errors, but they're not important to us.
Right.
So.
Right. Cool, man.
Fun times.
Yeah. I've been traveling a little bit. I just got back from Seattle.
Cool.
It's pretty fun, man. Pretty fun. Pretty nice time of year out there.
I saw a photo you posted like in the mountains. It looked like you were in like the Swiss Alps.
It was crazy. It really does feel like that out there. It's like the Swiss Alps of the western part of America,
Is that, how far was that outside of Seattle?
It's the let me look it up real quick. It's not too far. It was like 2 hours basically. And it was this place, the Cascades, or is the mountain range there that they said that about. And it's awesome. And then you just drive through the Cascades and you go to this place called Leavenworth. And it's like this old Bavarian style town. And it's adorable and it's just fun. Leavenworth is a Bavarian style village in the Cascade Mountains, central Washington state. Alpine style buildings with restaurants serving German beer and food line Front Street. It was pretty awesome. Everyone's just out drinking beer, and we got like bratwurst and we got like German chocolate, and it was awesome. And like you're just in the mountains there. I was like, this place must be absolutely perfect in the winter, like when the mountains are like snow-capped mountains and in the background, and they have all the lights up and everything. It felt really, really cool there.
Nice.
like not touristy at all. Like there's just people who live there, and it's really cool. So that was like a little day trip we did outside of Seattle, which was fun. The mountains are crazy though. I mean, like it was kind of cloudy, it was overcast a little bit, but once we got there, like the sun came out, and yeah, that shot I took, it was just like you turn around the corner, it was like, whoa, it's like you finally see the mountains. And it's just so funny every time I go to the West Coast because it's like, oh, that's a mountain. I forgot what those look like.
Yeah. I know we have mountains here and they're like hills.
Yeah. But it was fun. Seattle was fun. Seattle's like basically like New York. Actually, they're a little bit further along, I think, because there was actually restaurants where they were serving inside, which was pretty crazy. So it was like the first time I've eaten inside of a restaurant in like 6 months,
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
What?
so you can go inside like at 33% capacity or whatever.
Okay.
So it was pretty cool. And then they also had like the sidewalk seating, just like in New York. So we went to a lot of good places. My friend there lives in Ballard, which is like a pretty cool part of town. Maybe like a Williamsburg or something equivalent. And so they have like breweries everywhere. There's like this one corner that has like 4 breweries next to each other, and everyone's just was out, with their dogs and drinking beer at like delicious, hazy West Coast IPAs.
Yeah, I was going to say that Pacific Northwest. Yep.
It's really good, man. It's like that is the one thing I feel like I haven't really gone looking for it, but in New York, I'm just so used to getting like the craft cocktails and stuff. When I have those beers, I'm just like, oh my gosh, these are so good.
Oh, you have to like go to a restaurant that specializes in that stuff in New York. New York, it's just like the same 6 beers, like Brooklyn Lager, Lagunitas, but yeah, New York is all like cocktails for sure.
There has to be hazy IPAs you can find.
Yeah.
I think Redwood has some breweries down, or not Redwood.
Red Hook.
Yeah, Red Hook.
Yeah, you can look out for bars.
Seek them out,
Yeah. For really good beer menus, but you have to like be deliberate about that.
Yeah. Whereas I feel in a place like Seattle or San Diego, they're just going to be everywhere. Yeah.
You go into like a dive bar and they have the best IPAs you've ever had.
It's ridiculous. How are those people all not like 300 pounds? I mean, I drank so much beer over the last 4 days. It was wonderful. And he also had a delivery service. So like half his fridge is like just like great beers. And so I was just like, I felt like I was a kid in a candy store. It would be like 11:30. We're going to bed. It's like, I can have one more. There's like another delicious one in here. Like, so it was fun.
Nice.
Yeah. Hang out with his dog, play outside, do some grilling. It was a good time. Oh, he also has like this really nice butcher shop, and he's gotten into like grilling. So we had this like buffet like steak that he like seared and like on the charcoal. It was just delicious. So it was fun to get out of the city, be in a place with a little bit more space. It's not super dense there. So kind of have more space to just chill out. I started working on a project. I had missed my video last week, so I thought if I could make a video while I was kind of traveling, that'd be fun. So I took some footage of like me going to the airport and like working on my personal site at the airport and on the plane. So I'm going to edit that together soon and publish that this week.
Nice.
But I missed publishing my personal work journal update last week. So I was thinking, and it was just kind of like I've just been socializing a lot and like maximizing my time away from the screen and outside of my apartment because it's been coronavirus for months and I feel like that's okay to do. But I did want to keep up with the work journal. I'm going to, but it's just kind of enough of a pain that I was just like, I don't want to do it because like you have to open up samselkoff.com and VS Code. You have to run the Gatsby site. You have to go over there and then you have to start writing a bunch of JS. I don't want to do that. I just want to drop in some notes to like update my work journal, So I thought it was a good, it's like yak shaving, right? It's like, what are you doing? What does it look like I'm doing? I'm writing my work journal. Meanwhile, I'm like porting my entire personal site from Gatsby to Next. So I actually feel like I know I don't need to use Next to do this. Like Gatsby, I could just do things on the client for it. But I just felt like once I started going the route of having a back end, for my personal site. And if I want to do more experiments with that, I wanted to have Next because I wanted to have the API routes there. And again, I think I could I'm going to use Firebase for it. And I think I could just pull it in and not need that. But I just felt like it's just nice to have it there because I'm never going to get locked into something where it's like, oh, I'm so far down this site with Gatsby and now I need an API route. What the heck do I do? Like, what do you actually do there? And it's like, I don't want to have to think about it. I just want to have an answer for it. And with Next, it's just obvious what you do, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So
the Gatsby answer would be like deploy like a cloud function. And
exactly.
It's outside, but that's like outside the scope of Gatsby. So now you have to make all those decisions yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Next has just been improving a lot. And so the gap between Next and Gatsby for the things that Gatsby used to have an advantage of are like really closing fast.
Dude, every day. Every day that gap gets wider and wider.
It's crazy that they're how fast they're moving on it, you know?
Yep.
And it also feels like the philosophy, you know, we've talked about this before, like the philosophy of the people who are writing the tools you use, how they think about it, what problems they're trying to solve. I think Gatsby's main focus is helping, you know, let's say like a large e-commerce site or like an old WordPress site. That's kind of like almost their explicit goals in some of the marketing materials they put out is like, it's like the new WordPress. Well, like I'm not a WordPress developer, so, you know,
yep.
I think the next stuff is more aligned. So yeah, man, I basically packed up on Wednesday and I flew, you know, it's like a 5-hour flight. Please remind me to always buy extra legroom seating and never, ever, ever, ever let me save money for that ever.
I think we talked about this last episode and the conclusion was no one flies. So you're going to have a whole row to yourself.
The problem is if you ride United, which are like the worst planes in existence and it's awful and miserable. I'm like still recovering from my travel day yesterday because I had a whole travel day yesterday. But anyways, I ended up buying an upgrade on the way there because my seat didn't have power and the legroom was just ridiculous, even though there was no one in my row. So I spent like $150 just to upgrade my seat.
Just to get power. It's probably worth it if you.
It was totally worth it because I got to work for like 4 hours and I basically finished the whole thing. It was awesome. So it was totally worth it. And on the way back, unfortunately, they didn't have that option. But anyway, so yeah, I worked on it basically like 3 hours or 4 hours and a little bit at the airport before and got most of it done. I mean, my site is pretty easy. There's like 5 pages and mostly they're React components and just like in So yeah, this is basically from Gatsby to Next is going to be what my video is going to be about and just talking about some of the differences. But basically, you know, Gatsby has a pages directory, Next has a pages directory. So I started by moving those over, you know, the little things like getting Tailwind set up and what were some of the other things like?
Probably like the layout stuff.
The layout stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like using the _app file to do the navigation. That was a little bit different, but still easy. There's a few things that were a little tricky. I'll talk about those, but yeah, basically, let's see here. I've got my pages app, and what's in that. So there's a lot in here. I have like this animated overlay thing that I use on my mobile menu, which uses React Spring. And man, all this stuff was like, it was pretty awesome to just port it over and just see it render because like, it's a big change to go from a framework like Gatsby to Next. That's a big change. But like most of my content, like most of the app is like in these, it's like React. And it made me really be thankful for that because it felt like, again, we've talked about this before, but it's like, what's one explanation for why React became so popular? What's one explanation for why GraphQL became so popular? And it's because they got the boundaries right? The boundaries are so clean that you can have an app written in a tool like Gatsby, but still have a nice clean separation between your React UI description and then all the plumbing, right? So I was like continually impressed when like I was getting things working or the Spring animation was working. I was like, yeah, it's all React. Why wouldn't it work? But it's like still pretty crazy.
I mean, it's cool. You get to see that. You get to see what we've been talking about.
Yeah. And cool. And then also like all those things are working, but you have like Next.js fast refresh and Next.js caching. Like when I click the first time, it's like lazily generating the page. So it's like a much faster startup time. But then when I click around, it's fast, which is going to be like what it's going to be like in in production and the SSR stuff as well. So that was all really, really cool.
Have you deployed this?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm guessing you're going to use Vercel instead.
Yeah,
of
I want to. I want to. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to know how that, how that move goes.
Right, because I have some like Netlify stuff in here. Although this is like, I really try to keep this on the happy path when I made this, because one of my goals with like updating my personal site when I did that like a couple months ago was just like least debt possible, write the least code possible, so it doesn't get back into a situation where it's hard to update the links. So it's kind of fun because I usually do this thing now. We've been doing this. I mean, where we have this kind of like component/UI.js file where we export like title and lead and spacer and A tags, and then you start importing those things, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a seam, as far as the abstraction layer goes, so that a lot of it's for like not repeating Tailwind classes. Like I want a title on all 5 of my pages, so I just want to import a title component. And obviously we've taken that too far sometimes where it makes it harder to use. But one nice thing about it is that the things that are different between Gatsby and Next, I was able to isolate basically to those things. There was a few parts where Gatsby's like APIs were leaking into my application code. So like doing this really made me feel like, oh, I actually want to go even one step further just on the few areas. So you really do have this isolation, and like my content really is just React. So for example, like the link component, what do I actually need? I need a link component with like a to prop, and like an active class names. And like there's subtle differences between Gatsby's link component and Next's link component. Like there's an href, and like Next doesn't render a child tag. Like you have to do that yourself, right? But the way I use it, they always have an A tag. So yeah, it was kind of cool. Like I would make a few of those changes, or like refactor a bit of the code, and that way it was like basically it didn't know whether it was. It's like my navigation header didn't know whether it was being rendered in a Next app or a Gatsby app. It just it just used the components from UI.
Okay, but the components in UI, did the right thing. They would import Next link.
Exactly.
Add the A tag.
Exactly.
By the way, how awesome is Next Link? It's the best link API I've ever used.
Well, I'm a little confused by it. I copied one of the things that that made this very, very easy, and the things that would have added hours to my time is the fact that they have a lot of examples. So the things that slowed me down, it sounds like someone's like destroying an apartment in my building. Sorry if it's loud. One of the things that the things that would have slowed me down, they didn't because of the examples. So for example, my Next config has a little bit of Webpack code to help me get MDX to work. I've never written Webpack ever. I've never even read the docs, so I've heard the term loader, and like I've heard it in a conference talk, but I just haven't learned it yet because I haven't had to. So I was like, all right, this is going to suck. I'm going to have to learn this. So I'm going to take time to read it, but I didn't. I just got to copy this thing and it worked. And with the link thing, it was an active class. So you need to do something if you want to make it so that you can pass an active class name in, because it doesn't have that concept. And they have a use route. I've done this with React Router and Reach Router before, where you basically like use router and you check against the active, but then it's more complex than that. I did a whole video on this. It's actually not. This is the kind of thing I would like to see as part of Next Link out of the box, but it's more complicated than just saying if href is equal to location.path, like current location.path, because of the whole matching hierarchy thing. But they have an example. It's actually like the first example in their examples folder. It's called active class name, active link. So, I just copied it. I wouldn't have written this code by myself. I mean, it's children.only, and you pass in children, you get a child, you get the child class name, child.props.class name, and then you get as path from use router, and then you check if as path is equal to props.href or as path is equal to props.as. So I guess you can pass it in as, and that's like the href as thing, which So going back to your thing is the best link API. That part sucks, but they're actually changing that.
Yeah, it's in what, the next version, right?
It's in Canary, yeah. Yep.
Okay. I mean, that's amazing. It's
yeah.
It's also this is just something I really struggle with when I use like link components from all these frameworks.
Yeah.
And some of them add CSS classes, some of them add, and some of them they're an A tag, I guess. Right. That's what I would just assume. I love that Next doesn't render anything and it decorates the first child.
Yeah.
It's just
that
it's
part
super
is
clear.
cool.
It's super clear what's going on. And I never have to think like what's happening here.
Yeah. You're just saying, right, you don't have to understand the abstraction because it's not actually, it's like a separate concern.
Yeah, and all the link components in every framework I've ever used, they all leak because I have to know what it's rendering. So
right, but you do always want an A tag with a link, right?
Button maybe.
If it's a link though and it has an href, it should be a link.
Have an A.
It should be an A tag.
Yeah.
The hard one is is a link that looks like a button. That's the hard one. That's how to square that circle with given a button UI component that's like a renderless presenter, a link presenter, and then an actual functional link. This is the other thing is that we usually have these presenters that are like, I just want the classes to make this look like a link, whether it's throwing it in Markdown, whether it's an external link or an internal link. But then you want to use that, in different ways. Sometimes you want it to be an internal Next link. Sometimes you literally just want it to be with an href. But then it renders a Next link, spreads the props on it, and then its child is actually React.clone element child, and then it passes in the class name. So that's how they do the active class names, basically, is they use clone element. Why do they use React.clone element? That's just how you do it.
I have to look at the code.
That must be...
I think if you want to add new props to a child component, you have to clone it and then add the props. I believe that's why that was cloned. If you don't need to change the child's props, you can just render children. Got you.
Yep. Children.map, children.only. Verifies that children has only one child, a React element, and returns it. Otherwise, this throws an error. Okay, cool. So it's just saying, gotcha. So this link component is just saying, all right, you pass in a child. It's an A tag, probably. And then, it clones it. So that makes sense. But again, this is the kind of thing that, it's obviously, do I wish there was just like a API for it in Next? Yes. But at the same time, this is one of the thoughts that I had doing this stuff. Let me talk about the last thing and then I can make this point. So the last thing that took me a little bit was like sourcing my blog posts, because that's like the only kind of content I really have on my site right now. And in Gatsby, it's source posts. And when I first did this, like these are all MD and MDX files. And then I have like a Gatsby config where I have Gatsby plugin MDX. And, it's just funny, man. Like when I first did this, I remember really liking Gatsby's plugins because I just add them and then the blog posts end up in the content mesh and I can just query them on the index page and know exactly what I need to query to get the list of blog posts stored by date. I can even do some simple transforms at the GraphQL layer so I can format the date. All that stuff, I remember really, really liking that. One thing that always annoyed me with Gatsby stuff was like you have to work with the image. Like they nudge you so hard into their image thing that even if you have like an inline image in a markdown file, or you're using like MDX, you want it to go through that same image component, and that's kind of a pain in the butt. So that was an annoying thing about Gatsby that it was nice not to have to really just worry about. Although, of course, it means that the images maybe aren't as optimized, but for my case, it was fine. But so that was the question. Like, Gatsby is made for like ingesting content into its content mesh using GraphQL to render it out, and so. Whereas Next.js doesn't really have like an answer for that per se. Like you're not going to find an answer for that. So the question is like, how do you do that? And there's a couple different ways. My first pass was copy another example. Again, the examples directory is amazing in Next.js repo. So if you work with Next and you haven't checked that out, there is like so much good stuff in there. And it seems like they're all maintained. I don't really know how that's possible, but I think there's like 100 examples in there. It's crazy. And the first example I found that was like a simple blog post example, they made a dynamic route at pages / blog / bracket slug.js, which is how you do dynamic routes in Next. And then you use get static paths, which is a node function that crawls your _post directory, let's say, and creates those pages. So this was another thing I really liked about Next is like Gatsby also has this notion of writing node code to generate things that's build time. But like you go into Gatsby node and it's confusing.
Dude, I just wrapped up a project where this was 85% of the code was me writing all these transforms.
Yeah.
And it's really, really powerful. But there's something about get static paths returns an object, or what is it? A list of objects that have the params in them.
Yeah.
And this is in Next.
Yeah.
And there's something that's like, I don't even need to think hard about that. Like I just know how that's going to work. For every object in that list, I'm going to get a new page, and these are the params. With Gatsby, there's all these like on create node and create parent child link, and you have to do all this stuff, and it's powerful, and it this project I did was awesome, but it's you just have to have the docs open, and
that's
much
the
you
thing.
have to learn.
It feels like they're missing. Maybe those hooks are good for like Gatsby plugin authors because that's what they feel like they're more suitable for. But when you're just writing a simple thing, you just want one function that does it, and you can read it from top to bottom. So again, I found myself copying and pasting examples, but quickly not being intimidated because all of it was right there, and it was just a simple function. I can just see what's going on. Oh, to get the slugs, I'm calling fs read dir sync, in whatever directory I want, and just grabbing the name, and that's it. And now, like, if I want to move these or like have an archive folder in there of things that aren't published, I can literally just filter out. I mean, it's just JavaScript. You're just writing code. So that part is amazing.
Dude, that's such a good point, because in Gatsby, you don't do that. You use the source file system plugin, which does that fs read for you. But then you have to read its data that it creates. So there's little hops and there's little translations that you have to make.
It's a layer of abstraction that you don't fully understand, so you get those feelings pretty quick of, wow, the surface area is big. Wow, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I don't know how all these pieces fit together.
Am I even doing the right thing?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, really pretty amazing. Also, just so again, like coming back to this like boundaries question, it feels like Next has such good boundaries because all that code that's like outside of your UI, that's like the plumbing work, like crawling the file system, getting the pages, or converting MD to Markdown or MDX to like renderable code. It just feels really good. It doesn't leak everywhere. And also it just feels better, like copying. It's just the process felt better of copying and pasting examples and tweaking it than my experience reading Gatsby docs and trying to understand how these things work. And when I have Gatsby plugin file system and Gatsby plugin remark, and I want to add syntax highlighting, and then I have like, it's like there's this interaction where those three things happen. You're like, I'm just praying to God that there is a config option in one of these config plugins to do what I want. Otherwise, I'm screwed. And I just have to make a compromise that I don't get exactly what I want. Now,
to be fair to Gatsby, I think their happy path is like the plugin authors have already taken care of this for you. Like you as someone that's writing a blog shouldn't have to be learning about on create node.
Totally. And there are so many times that I have been with Gatsby where that stuff works. But again, that 10%, 20% of the time where you want to go outside of it, you're going to be spending a lot of time reading docs as opposed to just tweaking a simple example. Like I just have like these little archive posts that I want to have like published false. And I have my little lib, post JS where I call like read dir sync, and all of this is copied from the example, and I was able to just tweak this, or sort it by date or whatever. I was just able to tweak it because it's just node code right here, and I just call these from blog index. So this one, I'm actually not even using get static paths at all because I moved away from the dynamic route because that worked for Markdown, what their strategy in the example was for Markdown was use the dynamic slug route and use get static paths to get the slugs for everyone and generate those pages. And then when you render the thing, what you do is you look up, you use get static props to fs read file sync the actual Markdown file, and then put it into like a node function that's like HTML, Markdown to HTML, right? So you run like Markdown to HTML on the content, and then you return that so that this dynamic page gets the post as a prop, which has its content, which you can use like dangerously set inner HTML to render. And now you can do that on the server, like right at build time. It's just HTML, so it's rendered, and then it works on the client as well, of course. When I switched to MDX, because I have some blog posts that have some interactive stuff or like render some D3 charts, so I used MDX for that in Gatsby. The example was a little bit different. And so after finding their example with MDX and looking at the Tailwind blog, I decided it was easier to just use pages for each blog post instead of like putting them in like an underscore posts and then having a dynamic route. Because like it wasn't as you can't just serialize it to HTML. Yeah. Exactly. It needs to be referencing like the JavaScript somehow for the MDX to work.
Yeah, this is definitely, I think, a point in favor of Gatsby. Because in Gatsby, you don't even think about this. You just write GraphQL and you're like, hey, it just, the MDX just shows up.
Exactly. 100%. So this was the thing that slowed me. This was the thing that made this like a 2 or 3 hour project into like a 4 or 5 hour project. But once I found those examples, it was more about like knowing where to look and then like knowing what to copy kind of thing. Cool. I feel like they could, if they had an example with Next.js, that was a little bit more, this was the problem. Their example with Next.js used pages, but I wanted like a folder for each blog post because I have assets. I didn't want to put my freaking pictures into public. And also this was like, talking about those boundaries, one thing that was so nice when I was moving, I was literally copying pasting stuff from my Gatsby site to my Next site. And I was like, if this happens again, like I want these posts to be self-contained. Like it says lowest common ancestor / and then it's like index.mdx. That's like the post. And then I have all these like GIFs and images. I don't want to move those into like public / whatever for Next. And then like static / whatever. If I'm in Gatsby, like I want those co-located. Because it just feels like a way better boundary. It just feels better. And I knew that like Adam had done that with the Tailwind blog. So after looking at their example and seeing that they were able to do that using the pages approach, that's when I decided to do that.
Cool. I have a question if you're done with all that. So my sort of like hot take on all this was like Next is better for apps. Gatsby is better for, like the content
doc
sites,
blogs.
Sites. Yeah, exactly. Do you feel like Next is gonna take over that? Take like share away from Gatsby there?
I think people like you and I who are comfortable learning this stuff and getting down and writing a little bit of node code to do our work are probably going to end up liking this more. And also it just feels like getting reps in with Next is a better investment. Learning how get static props works and get all these things. There's like the thing I'm excited about learning with once I get my work journal ported over and get Firebase set up so I have a back end is the regenerate or fallback thing where let's say I have 10 work journal entries in Firebase. I deploy my site. It crawls it and it builds static pages for those 10 entries. But then I go and I add a new entry. It will work without rebuilding the site because it checks.
That fallback thing.
It revalidates in the background. So what it does is it serves you up a potentially stale version of the work journal. And then in the background, it does a fetch to Firebase. And if there's a new entry, it updates it. And then everyone else is going to get that version of the cached page. So that's what I want. I want to be able to basically edit my work journal without redeploying my app or even building it locally, but also redeploying it. And if there's a typo, I should be able to fix it without redeploying everything. So that's what I'm pretty excited about.
What is this, like 1997? Dynamic apps? Yeah, no, that's
so that kind of stuff is amazing. And like, again, just the trajectory of Gatsby for me is not really what I don't think it's aligned with the kind of stuff that I work on, that we work on as much.
Absolutely. Like we're not writing like forms where you're putting in content and clicking the save button. That's just not good for Gatsby. Even though I know you can do it, it's just
exactly. So I think there are times where the Gatsby stuff will be ahead of it, but I think it's probably, it feels like a riskier bet to go in on Gatsby because it's just a huge surface area. It's like you're all in on that or not. Like my Next app, there's not a lot of Next code in my Next project. There's way less Next code than there was Gatsby code in my Gatsby version. Because like you just open this and look at Gatsby config, and it's it's 83 lines. Whereas over here I have like my little 24 line Next config, and that's just for MDX. And then all the get static props and stuff. But that's like, it's just JavaScript functions. You know what I mean? It's just node functions that I can run anywhere. So again, I like the boundaries of it. I mean, especially if I start using the API routes, it will be more and more a Next app, of course. It's not like it's going to be completely portable. I'm not going hexagonal architecture here. But no, man, I really like it. And I think, I don't know what I would use Gatsby for if I were starting a new project. Because if we were starting MirageJS.com today, it's just a different landscape than it was a year ago, where Next didn't have like the static generation capabilities and all this other stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I get you say you don't know. I guess I would say like the client work, like when we do client marketing pages or
true
doc pages, for clients we would do that because we're not going to be around forever to, tweak the internals.
The custom Next code. That is one thing where the constraints maybe are a really good thing, and you're just wiring together plugins, and you just stick with the happy path as much as possible. And you're not trying to make a custom work journal thing as part of your. It's just a static site, and you just want it to be straightforward. And like the docs are good. Like you can Google a lot with Gatsby and find a lot of people using it. It's super popular, right? But the Next examples are really good too. So, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I really love that the node code is in the same file as your React component. Like, you have a little React component here, and then you need to like scrape your post directory, and you just have a 6-line function that does that in the same file. You're importing FS from whatever, node APIs. And to me, that's so much better because there's a high coupling, obviously, between these two pieces, but they're not in separate files. They're not in separate parts of your project. And
that concept is going to carry over. So when you write your work journal piece, you're going to have node code that fetches from Firebase to populate that React component down below it or above it, however.
Exactly. So pretty cool, man. Really, really cool stuff. It just, I just wrote this down as I was kind of reflecting after I finished, and I was just like, the whole process of working in it just felt better. It just felt better working on a Next site. It felt more fun. It felt faster. I know we were talking about, we both have some Next projects that have like weird build issues right now. I wonder if it's because of the new fast refresh stuff. But in general, overall, like just working on this and porting it over, it just felt more pleasant. I wasn't waiting on Gatsby to build GraphQL queries and delete caches and all that kind of thing. So it was pretty sweet, man. It was pretty sweet.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully I'll get that video out this week, and I'll have a dynamic work journal that will take me 1 minute to update every week instead of 8 minutes. But it only took me 19 hours.
Yeah. It'll pay off after 3.5 years.
Exactly. What you been up to, man? What you been working on?
Not too much. I have a Next app, Amplify stuff.
Hacking away on what you were talking about last time.
Yeah. I actually noticed something that I wanted to bring up. There's like a benefit I've noticed about like this Amplify. We're not going to talk about Amplify. I'll just put like Amplify Firebase, in the same bucket here.
Yeah.
In the past when we've done like consulting, there's every company we've ever worked with. There's always like a front end team and a back end team.
Yeah.
And they might be like on the same team, but there's always like one or two developers responsible for front end, one or two developers responsible for back end. And I feel like a lot of the tech that we pitch is always to make like the front end team more autonomous. So in the past, we've gone in and we've said like, you should use JSON API. That way the front end developers don't have to spend hours every week convincing the back end developers how to shape, new data for an endpoint. Just use JSON API, and the front end developers can just fetch whatever data they need for the page. You make this.
You're not kidding either about hours. About these conversations.
And it's not a one-time conversation. It's literally every week.
Right. And
there's always, but what if we did it like this? No, I need it like this. And the wrong version gets deployed, and meetings, and yeah. But all this tech it's always like, oh, let's make the front end team more like, not have to rely on the backend team as much. And that's like a big pitch that we make. But I don't know if we ever completely eliminate that. I mean, even when we use JSON API, like there's still tons of discussion that needs to go on. There's still, we don't just escape the front end team can now fetch whatever data they want. Sometimes there's not endpoints set up. Sometimes there are endpoints, but the like backend code is inefficient. So it's really slow. So I kind of realized that like there's a nice benefit of like the Amplify Firebase model where you actually do make the front end team more autonomous, but you do it not by like you do it by completely eliminating the backend team.
Right.
I thought that was interesting. So like all this, yeah, I was just
back and
yeah, I was just reflecting on like even when we've like convinced teams to adopt JSON API, I don't know that we actually saw massive improvements. I think the code base is better off. I think the developers are happy, but I don't know if we got rid of those weekly meetings. I don't know if we truly made front end teams autonomous. And so, yeah, it's just something I've noticed about, this. The way you make the front end team autonomous is by completely eliminating the back end team.
Yeah. Interesting. I just blanked out. I need calories. So there's like a lot there, but what do you think? I know a lot of people are like, oh, front end back end distinction is arbitrary and like is not useful, like not good. And if we're writing like back end code in our front end apps, we're writing Node and stuff. I mean, are we back end developers?
Oh, I don't think that. I think the distinction is awful. I think it causes more harm than good. But I mean, just every single company that we've worked with,
that's how they organize.
That's how. Yeah, there's always like two product people, two back end engineers, 3 or 4 front end engineers, and then there's like designers that come in for a week every 6 months. Like that is how every team is set up. And so I think, I think if we went into a company that was like, no, you need all full stack engineers, they would just be like, okay, we're not working with you. That's like ridiculous. We can't staff this project with all full stack engineers. So I think that that's just
the reality of it.
Yeah. And yeah, it does. It creates a lot of friction. And when you look at like, think about like all the teams you've been on, I think like the people that are able to cross that bridge and they know how to communicate with the front end engineers or they know how to communicate with the back end engineers. Those are the people that generally like, can lead the project or have that more senior role on the team.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I think this is your point is one of the reasons why GraphQL did get popular because the front end developer can open up graphical and get instant feedback on what they're able to query and mutate. And yeah, it's not true that you can just lob it over the fence and every query is going to be efficient enough. But from the stories I've heard, I guess that would be the question, right? The empirical test is if we had, over the next few years, we do this with GraphQL instead of just a format, will it help?
I feel like it'll be the same. I feel like there'll be arguments about what to name the things and there's a million ways
maybe less time wasted on a few things like the actual shape of things or like how to get it once it's in there because it's all answered by GraphQL, right? Like the schema at least answers some of those questions, but you still have to choose modeling and how to get it and stuff.
Yeah, it's just every I don't know what you call it, like senior person that leads multiple teams at a company is always looking for like, oh, how do we make front end more autonomous? How do we give front end more power? And yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like in the past when we pitch these like little API things, I don't know. It's not a knock on the technology.
It's just pitching. Not the right way to solve the problem, actually.
Yeah. And it's better. Like, maybe it's just because it's like a super hard boundary. Like, I can't schedule a 2-hour meeting on Wednesday afternoon with AWS developers to get them to bike shed over or the names of the keys or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe that hard boundary just really forces the issue to just be resolved right there.
Right. Interesting. It also reminds me of when DHH talked about like the SQL developers, and he said the same thing, like what is it, like the SQL admins or database DB, what do they call them? What were they called?
DBAs.
Yeah, DBAs, yeah.
Yeah.
And just how with the right technology, you don't need a DBA anymore. That's the way to figure that. That's the way to solve that communication barrier, is to just eliminate them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, how many... If you were like, oh, we need a DBA on this project, like, people would be like, no.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some places where they still need them, but like, right.
Of course. But for like your bread and butter CRUD web app.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true.
Even more than that, right? Like 99% of apps probably.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's true. Just think about all the teams we've been on. It's front-end engineers, back-end engineers, product person.
Yeah.
That's generally the makeup.
Yep. I'm excited about getting Firebase set up here on my site and just seeing how I can do it, how easy it is, making a little page, eventually a UI for me to edit the data, as a logged in user. So getting all set up, I'd like that. Yeah, it should be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'll have more to report back. But I just wanted to go, I've used Firebase, or I've used Hasura for a few side projects that like maybe I would have used this for in the past. And I just wanted to go with a more all-in-one solution. I know Firebase is very easy and well-documented and fast and everything. With Hasura, it would just be, especially because I have the API routes in my Next app, I would be able to do that fine. And it would have a nice little place for it. I think the code would be pretty tidy. But I just kind of want to use Firebase, so I have auth and everything.
Dude, I think you're going to love it.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I think you're just going to like...
I'm going to be like, why is not everyone doing this? Like, I built this entire thing in like no time, and I didn't write code for it. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. There's nothing to maintain. It's pretty sweet.
So I'll report back on that. But it's nice that, and then integrating with the revalidation feature from Next. I'm excited to see how that goes.
Yeah.
And then deploying it to Vercel. So that should be done. That will be done by this week, and I'm going to get a video out by it. So by the time this podcast is out, it should be up on my YouTube channel. It will be up on my YouTube channel.
Cool. This podcast was like the extended version of your video.
Right, exactly.
The behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. Very cool stuff, though, man. Very cool stuff. Like, I again, just the Gatsby and Next question, it's kind of like, where do I want to get my reps in and what do I want to invest in? And if you can whip up a Next site with a Firebase backend that is like statically rendered and revalidates in the background, like I would make us like a website for our podcast where we can, I would make us a little, like, I just feel like there's so many things that would just be so easy to whip up and deploy and not become debt. It's not debt because most of it is React code and it feels pretty portable. And then there's this Firebase integration. So kind of exciting though. I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out.
Cool.
Awesome. Shall we wrap it?
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.